yeah, I don't necessarily have to go down that route of having like a really awesome gadget, but I recognise that those awesome gadgets do exist and they are brilliant. But anyway, I'm going on a tangent when it comes to, you know, there's an example that Neil Kiernan once gave in his I think it was his, I can't remember which one of his radio shows, but it was for V Radio, and he was giving an example of an argument that people have against resource-based economy, in terms of, you know, but what happen, you know, if people can go wherever they want, whenever they want, what's going to stop them coming into my living room when I'm living there? Well, he gives a brilliant example of the porta potty, or as we call it in the UK, a portaloo, right? A portaloo has a thing called an engaged and a vacant sign on it, that when it's occupied, someone can lock the door, and by doing so, automatically it puts up the engaged, sign on the door, so people outside it can tell, oh, there's someone in there, someone's using it. Okay, that's fine. Instead of like, you know, knocking on the door and say, come out now, I want to use it. Now, instead they go, all right, sorry, someone's in there, I'll go find another one, right? It's the same sort of thing. No one would feel entitled to your home because they will recognise that someone's already living there and they will just have to get over it. But anyway, entitlement to earn profit. It isn't necessarily an isolated thing which can be done without interaction with others. So there has to be a large enough number of people who also want to earn profit, and by means they can go off and have their own profit system. You know, it's just like, you know, as long as that profit system does not start, you know, impinging upon the freedoms of other people, which it will do eventually, so I hope they just learn that lesson. But the idea of people feeling entitled to have slaves was abolished years ago, centuries ago in fact. You know, this is part of the reason why a value system shift is critical, because when you talk to people about this, they will only see this from the contemporary frame of reference. So of course they're going to assume problems that exist today will also exist in the future, and they ask, like you have from that frame. You know, they see things occurring right now, and they think that is, you know, that's the way things are. So you say, you know, how do you deal with rape in a resource-based economy? You know, I mean, it's a bit like saying how do you deal with how do you deal with sharks in London? Well, there are no sharks in London because London is a landmass. It's an area of a landmass, and it's not underwater, at least not at the moment. At the time of this recording, at least I hope it isn't. But, you know, you don't get shark problems in London because sharks are in the ocean. They're not on the land. You know, this is the same thing. Like, you know, there is no rape in a resource-based economy because when we've achieved what we would call a resource-based economy, then the problem of rape has been resolved. But anyway, question 6. Is there a political platform for TZM? If there is not, then how can we change the implemented democratically? Then how can change be implemented democratically? Well, yeah, there is a political platform. It's in this country, at least, it's the Money Free Party UK. Thank you very much, Guy, for coming in with that answer on the on the thread that I created to request these questions. So yes, I feel derivative now. But yeah, the Money Free Party They're very, very well-intentioned people, very reasonable people as well. They're advocates of a resource-based economy, and they're wishing to create a political platform for those means. They're small at the moment. I mean, I'm not sure if they're on any ballots yet. I think they might be on like 1 or 2 local ballots. But yeah, there's that if you want to look into that. I think there's quite a few equivalents for other countries as well. But for the UK, where I live, the Money Free Party UK, personally, I'm unconvinced how politics can actually solve problems within the current system. But if you think it can, then by all means support them. I mean, I've given my stance on the ineffectiveness of politics in terms of social change in my I think it was Z-Day Z-Day Maidstone 2013, I think it was, where I gave an introductory talk, and there I basically went through why I don't personally believe that politics can change anything. But anyway, there's that. Next question. Okay. Peter Joseph may not have invented the concepts TZM is built on, but he made himself a following. He was also good at playing with words, making things seem more possible than they really are. I'm a realist, Adam, not a fantasist. Fantasist, is that even a word? Trying to, in a sense, control our evolution is pointless and a waste of energy. But in a nutshell, tell me what it is TZM would do to the entire planet if they could. Okay, first off, just to address that last bit, nothing. Why should TZM have to do anything to the whole human species? But there's a lot of points here. Firstly, Peter Joseph made himself a following. Sure, he founded the movement himself and got the ball rolling, but the whole idea is for people to become their own leader. I mean, there's a video on YouTube. If you type into YouTube, Peter Joseph, be your own leader, I think, or something to that effect, you'll find I think it's like an 8 to 10 minute video, most of which was taken from a Q&A session that he did, where he basically just lays out all these principles about, self-governance and all that sort of stuff, and why it's very difficult today to be self-governing, and why it is very important to be self-governing. But you can look into that there. But you suggest that Peter Joseph is guilty of some linguistic manipulation to such as, can you give me an example? No, well, of course you don't give an example. There's just a string of baseless assertions. But essentially you're dismissing the train of thought without properly researching it, because I can tell from some of the things in here that, the way they're phrased and what they're actually referring to is not applicable to a resource-based economy. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to like dismissive things, I've addressed this sort of thing quite a few times before, but especially in my weapons of mass discussion presentation, I touched on the whole "it'll never happen" mentality and the kind of logic bombs that can be used to dismiss such a cynical view. But recently, because I've found myself having created more logic bombs since I created that presentation. I think I may at some point in the future do a sort of weapons of mass discussion part 2 or something, where I just detail all the new logic bombs that I've created. But one of them, when it comes to the idea of dismissing things as unrealistic and whatever, the one of the things I say to people is, how does it feel to hold an opinion that has to be ignored in order to allow for social change to happen. Because here's the thing: would social change happen if everyone was of the idea or the belief or whatever that that social change was unrealistic and unattainable? Would it happen? No. So, in order for social change to happen, we have to ignore the cynics, right? So, one thing I sort of playfully ask the people who are being cynical as a sort of like last resort question before I just completely give up on them, I ask them, well, how does it feel to hold a position that has to be ignored in order for positive change to be possible? But moving on to other things you said. You say controlling our evolution, but I dare say if a person who isn't very young develops cancer, and they will survive if they are treated and engaged in a beneficial change of lifestyle to optimize health, so they'll actually live a long and prosperous life, would you say that child should die because it's a fantasy that they could go into remission and improve their quality of life by also adopting healthy behaviour? No, of course you're not going to say that. But at the same time, you think that we as a species who are quite young and haven't evolved, as it were, to behave in line with what nature demands of us if we hope to survive, we've created an unsustainable socioeconomic system that could result in the extinction of humanity. But as long as we accept that we cannot go on living like this and remove the root of this behaviour, that being scarcity, which we do by creating systems to provide for life needs, we remove the structural instigators and reinforcers for destructive behaviours and values. We literally innovate our way out of poverty. Crime, war, greed and unnecessary suffering, that they will all be things that are made as, made into things of the past because we've adapted, we've improved, we've moved forward, and we've just grown the hell up as a species. Why is that unrealistic? And how the hell does that have any evidentiary support, considering that a cursory look at human history is one long series of trial and error, yes, but on the whole, improvements. We have the poorest people in this world have, a standard of living so much higher than some of the poorest people a few centuries ago. Because the poorest a few centuries ago didn't even live to sort of suffer in poverty. They just suffered for a short while, then just completely died because there was just nothing. And when I say the poor of, say for example, the poor of the Western world, people on benefits, for example, they are actually living a far higher standard of living than even royalty centuries ago enjoyed. So, the very fact that we have technology, capable of putting buggies on other planets, why can't we put food in bellies? Okay, we can put buggies on Mars. Why can't we put food in bellies? Well, we can, we just won't at the moment because that doesn't make money, does it? So I think, pardon my French, fuck money. Anyway, but you call the example of societal therapy, you would call that a fantasy, something that just isn't realistic. I'm glad I'm no longer that cynical. You wouldn't let the child die, but you would stand by and not intervene on any level in the downfall of a species that you are also a member of, purely because the transition will be a pain in the arse. Does that sound like a sustainable or efficient or even compassionate worldview? I don't think so. Excuse me. Anyway, moving on. Question 8, because I've, I'm going on way too long with these. This is a bit of a long question. Mankind will always, and in capitals, always need leaders, or there will be chaos. Thing is, Adam, unless the population of the world is under 10,000, no way in hell can we not have leaders. Bigger populations need to be governed, just like a pack of wolves has an alpha. From the dawn of civilization, there has always been those who have led and those who follow, those who question and those who fight to change. 7 billion people cannot govern themselves. One man may rape a woman, another sees justice as death, so he kills them, and so on. You have total chaos. Now, people who are chosen to lead, as it is meant to be today, can lead on behalf of those who choose them. It's merely getting the balance right. Mankind will need leaders until the day we all die. How would this be different in the system you propose? Okay, well, for starters, not teaching people, especially not teaching them from an early age, that they need to consent to other human beings controlling their lives, or else there will be chaos, that is the first step in ensuring self-governance. If we don't teach people that we have to have leaders, then we will, be equipped with the tools of transitioning out of needing leaders altogether. The more you reinforce the delusion, the more it's going to perpetuate. The more you tell people that they need people controlling them, the more they will believe that, and the further down the road we're pushing our starting blocks of real social evolution. But if you think about it, this is the exact same defense given by certain Christians who say that without God, human beings would have no source of morality, and thus we would be, quote unquote, running around killing and raping people, end quote. There's one example of, I think it was an episode of The Atheist Experience, which is an awesome show, by the way. There was a caller, I think his name was Mark or something, but he called back quite a few times and, under different fake names. But one of the first ones was that he was saying that without God, we would just run around raping and killing each other, which is completely absurd. But anyway, moving on, to other things you said. You give an exact number of people who could be self-governing, 10,000. But how have you arrived at that number? Why that number? Why is it 10,000? Why not 11,000? Can 11 is 10,000 the exact number where if you get 10,001, all of a sudden everything comes crashing down? Obviously that's being a bit pedantic, but why 10,000? What's the causal chain that you have followed that leads you to that specific number? And is that anything to do with the supposed population reduction statistic that certain people who get called New World Order, they cite for a balanced society? And you say bigger societies need to be governed, and compare it to a wolf pack. But a wolf pack is not generally a large group in the context we're comparing it to, that being billions of people. The analogy doesn't fit. Think about it. Is there such thing as a wolf pack that is 7 billion strong? No. Wolf packs are in the relative to the kinds of population sizes that we're comparing it to, they're very small. And you say that only small groups of people can be self-governing. So small wolf pack has an alpha. So you're contradicting yourself here. Anyway, moving on to other things you said. Since you used the term alpha, this is something I've been looking into lately, and I will be writing a presentation about it in the near future, about how alpha, like true alpha characteristics, can be applied compassionately, not just for like one person, but the entire human family. Because a wolf pack doesn't just lead; a wolf pack protects and provides. We could all be. I mean, that's the whole idea of self-governing or being sovereign. For those of you who are familiar with the idea of personal sovereignty and all the stuff that goes with that, that's what this is like. You are being an alpha to yourself. You are protecting yourself. You are, you're being a man, as it were. If you want to put it that way. But you rightfully list the kinds of people there are. Moving on to other things, you list these people, these like characteristics. But why is it the leaders who are the mandatory ones to control everyone else's lives? Why can't it be the people who, you said some people question. Why can't it be the questioning people who have authority? I mean, surely the people who are questioning are people who are, more informed about how things actually work, so thus the decisions they would make to govern society would be at least more relevant. But you don't even have to go that far. Why does any one group get to control everyone? Yes, some groups are better at managing that, but that doesn't mean that one group should be granted monopoly and power over all the rest. That's what's known as tyranny. Okay? But I mean, you also give a rape scenario as an example, but you only really say that different people have different ideas about justice, but it doesn't matter what anyone personally thinks about justice. It's about what is the most optimal, humane, compassionate, and most importantly, preventative means of dealing with rape. Yeah? I mean, what lies at the root of this behaviour? If the resolution to the rape problem meant we had to improve our way of life, wouldn't you say that's a good idea and not something to be ignorantly dismissive of? I mean, these kinds of ideas that people have to have leaders or else there will be chaos. These are the defences of oppression, and it's the propaganda that is used to reinforce the idea that having people that rule your life is the best means to orient society. And I'm sorry, but it forces a blind acceptance of oppression. Moving on to the other things, you say that election politics could be fair, but it has to be balanced. Well, I'll tell you what. Again, I refer you to the introductory talk that I gave at Z-Day Maidstone. It was 2013. I gave that presentation where I basically just lay out flat exactly why politics cannot be fair. But it cannot be fair due to the fact that mostly that everything is for sale in the open market. Everything from fizzy drinks to the cooperation of legislative powers. Everything is for sale. Nothing is sacred, as it were. This nullifies any hope that we can have what people generally call a democracy in the current system. Because the idea of democracy is completely thwarted by market behaviours. The idea of democracy has to be built in. Not an optional extra, it should be part of the fabric of how a paradigm operates. Not an optional extra. This is why I say that the system that we live in is fundamentally flawed, because it requires external controls on what it does to at least try to stop it from killing off its populace. Okay? Think about what this system would do if all regulations on industry and politics were removed. That would be like releasing a tiger that you've spent 10 years jabbing with a stick. You know, that would be chaos, my friend. And NLRBE is not. It's in fact the opposite. Anyway, moving on. More questions. Question 9. What would man do if they never had to work? Become weak, lazy, fat? Well, it depends. Let me ask a question to you, the listener. Anyone who's listening to this right now, here is a question I am directing right to you. What are your hobbies? What are your personal passions that you undertake in your spare time? Things that you love doing? Just think about those. There you go. That's what you would do in a resource-based economy. Welcome to the incentive system. Doing things for the joy of doing it. Not, you don't pursue your passions because you're paid to do it. You pursue them because you love those activities, and you would do them if you didn't have to worry about money. If you had the time, and if you had the ability and access to the necessary resources to do it, you would do that. And that's what you would do in a resource-based economy. And not only that, but think of all the other really cool hobbies that you could pursue if money wasn't an object. Think about it, man. All the things that you would love to do if you could do that in a resource-based economy. Now, with those kind of odds at your feet, would you ever become weak, lazy, fat? I certainly wouldn't. Anyway, moving on. Question 10. Discoveries aren't made overnight. What happens when we are all-knowing in what we have already discovered? What do we do while we wait to break through more barriers? Oh dear. There's time delays in the scientific major scientific discoveries? Really? Just because they aren't made overnight, does that mean that there's huge lull periods where no innovation is occurring? Sorry, but that's just not how the world works. But going back to your all-knowing thing, considering that for humanity to become all-knowing, it's actually logically impossible. As human existence continues, every single second we are creating new information about ourselves, our behaviour, our culture. Every second that you are sat here listening to this, there are other people all over the planet creating new things and documenting new experiences. How can there ever be a point when all humanity can know everything there is to know, when new knowledge is always being created? How can anyone, even on an individual basis or as a collective basis, be all-knowing? Because even then, we would only be able to say that for maybe a couple of seconds at best. We'd say, right, we're all oh no, not anymore. No, not anymore. There are no lull periods in science. If you want proof of this, then there's a wonderful thing called This Week in Science. And you can even, I think they've even got a Facebook page that updates every single week with a picture that they share out on Facebook. And it basically a black background, picture at the top that said This Week in Science, and it gives pictures of, I think, something 6 or 8 separate scientific discoveries, groundbreaking discoveries that have occurred just within the last 7 days alone. They put one of these out every single week. All right? Look them up. They're called This Week in Science. Highly recommend them. But anyway, moving on. Question 11. How do we transition from the fact that more money means people can get bigger, better houses, more land, better quality of goods, holidays in the sun and good hotels, eating